It's like I'm walking on sunshine.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Doomers around the world. My name's Charlie McGrath. I am the co-founder of DoomCast, DoomCast.com, DoomCast Show on Twitter. My co-founder is Doug Owen, blacklistednews.com, all the other Doomer sites and links I just gave you. You can find this program there. You can find rebroadcasts of it here. We're running a very, very late in the week DoomCast. It is the 9th day of February, Sunday. And because of my week in Las Vegas, we had to push the DoomCast number 27 off until now. So we're going to roll, though. We're not going to miss a week, and that was our commitment. And here we are very, very late in the week getting this done. We will be recording DoomCast 28 mid next week, probably Wednesday or Thursday. Doug Owen, how are you?
Good, man. Good. How was Vegas?
Vegas sucked, man. Vegas is a giant sucking cesspool.
That's the point, right? To suck money out of your pocket, wealth, redistribution.
Yeah. Yep, it is the Oz. It's the fantasy land where all your dreams can come true, man. Just go and put some money on.
Did you make anybody's dreams come true? Did yours get close to coming true? Anything?
I didn't. The only Steve Wynn's dreams probably came a little closer to coming true because I had to stay at his place, his very palatial, opulent. I did a quick little video of my.
Who's this guy that you're talking about, though?
Steve Wynn?
Yeah.
Steve Wynn owns the, well, of course, the Wynn.
Wynn's.
Resort.
He's the casino baron.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big time casino baron. He owns the Wynn. He owns the Encore. And he owns a bunch of other casinos too. But I don't know. I don't have the complete list in front of me. But they're very, very nice. I mean, they're super duper nice. They're top shelf. Every room is a suite, and they're actually gorgeous to stay, and the service is over the top.
Sounds horrible. Keep telling me more. Sounds it's insanely bad.
The bad is it's nearly $300 a night. I had a $1,600 bill for staying there for 5 nights. That averages over $300 a night. Because if you want to use the internet, it's $14 a day. If you want a bottle of water, it's $9 a bottle. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculously expensive. The place was completely packed because of the International Builders Show. That's why I was down there. The International Builders Show, the largest building show on the planet. In fact, it only can be held in 2 locations, either Florida at the Disneyland resorts where they have enough convention space for it, or the Las Vegas Convention Center where they have enough space for it. So they do it a couple of years in Vegas, and then they switch and do it a couple of years in Orlando, and it bounces back and forth. But, I worked a booth for 5 days on my feet for 8 hours a day, standing in a 10 by 10 cube, telling people about a product. And it gets very, actually, I only did that for 3 days. The actual show was Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I had to be there Sunday, and I couldn't leave till Friday. I was there for 5 nights. But it's the industry I grew up in. It's, I get to meet a lot of people in this business. And over the last several years, it's become more and more difficult to play the everything's going to be okay game. And that's what I saw down there. Everybody is, fantasizing that we're going to push through and have a building boom continue just like people were doing in 2004 and 5 and 6, right up until the last dog was hung. And I found it interesting that the day before the show opened, the day before the opening ceremonies, we had a 300-point day down on the Dow.
Yeah.
And Doug, it's the same crap, the same garbage, the same optimism, the same low interest rates, the same jargon of how the housing recovery has legs and it's moving forward. Back then, it was housing has never fallen nationally, coast to coast, is what Ben Bernanke said in 2006. The same feeling, the exact same tenor of the folks that think they know something about what's going on with this economy is going on now, as we saw previously to the last collapse. And I think the only difference is there's more people that I ran into at the IBS show that were not completely duped. There were more people who understood that this isn't going to last. These zero interest rates are not going to last, and a big collapse, an implosion in the housing market very well could be in our very immediate future. And we all agreed on one thing: the people that had that same train of thought, that if it happens again, it's going to be far, far worse than it was in 2008, and there won't be any magic bullet, which of course is the bailouts at the two big banks. That isn't going to happen again. We're going to have something completely different. It's going to be more like a bail-in type system. But when this one blows, it's going to blow big time. But that's still a very small majority of people that.
I mean, are the people just hoping that there's going to be enough government involvement in the housing sector? I mean, that's what happened after 2001, where George Bush basically pushed forward and made these banks give loans, subprime loans, to and incentivize that to
right.
people that usually would not qualify, and it was the whole dream of owning a home in America, and that really was one of the things that metastasized into the 2008 crash that people don't necessarily point to. Not enough of them. They oversimplify it by saying, well, it's just the banksters, and this is all controlled demolition. I mean, that's true, but some of the many underlying factors, because everybody knew that these were subprime loans, so they bet against it. So it was basically government intervention facilitating and bringing to fruition all of these bad bets on the government side, on the private equity firms and others that profited from betting against AIG and betting against Freddie and Fannie and betting against the American people. They did handsomely, even so much now that Hank Paulson, of all people, has become this I would say sheep in wolf's clothing or wolf in sheep's clothing, but maybe the former is more accurate.
Right.
Coming, saying that there's this huge housing crisis that is coming forward. Of course, we have a lot of dead bankers, more dead bankers.
Good.
Charlie McGrath.
Good.
Have you been keeping up with any of this while you were in Vegas?
No, it's typical Vegas. There is no.
You're paying $14 for the internet, Charlie McGrath. What are you doing with that?
Nothing. I didn't do it. I paid it for 1 day so I could upload a video, and then that was it. I said, the hell with it. I'm not paying $14 a day for internet. I did try to use my phone as a hotspot, and it had like 3G, low 3G at best, so it was ridiculously slow. But to go back to your
one of these guys, I just wanted to mention, his name is Richard Talley, and he shot himself in the head 7 times with a nail gun, which is a very odd way to commit suicide.
Happened. Did that happen?
That did happen this week while you were hanging out in Vegas, working the booze.
Oh, that's awesome.
Exchanging swag.
Wait a minute. Did he? I'm surprised. First of all, he didn't do it 33 times on the 33rd floor, right? In room 33.
Right. Just like the professor with the candlestick. I mean, almost that absurd. So yeah, now there's a dead reporter that has gone along with it. David Byrd, or oil markets reporter, who has worked with Wall Street Journal for over 20 years, vanished without a trace. And all of these guys have one thing in common, and that is that the SEC and other regulators were looking into their private affairs, and they were in trouble, which makes a lot of sense when you're a bad banker. If somebody's coming for your ass, maybe you're not at the top, you're low-hanging fruit, you might pay the price. You might be the fall guy, and maybe these guys knew it, or they were able to maybe bring some kind of information forward that would be appealing to a prosecutor, maybe the prosecutor themselves. Who knows? I mean, we get into speculation land, but it's pretty convenient for all of these people surrounding these industries to just start kind of going missing, dying under very unusual circumstances. So does this highlight something much bigger? Over the weekend, there's been this rumor. I saw Max Kaiser reporting on it and others that this might have something to do with the Forex market. Many people think that that's completely rigged. And it's somewhere where I think your expertise kind of outpaces mine, looking at some of the more, I guess, profitable things that you could do in the market that would make you a target to the SEC. Maybe some of these, the inner workings of the Forex and the manipulation thereof?
Well, yeah, and I should read into it a little bit more before I make any
broad accusations.
Yeah, before I say that, yeah, this is absolutely, they're all about to be busted for fraud. It could be because they know what's coming. They know that either the hammer of so-called justice is coming their way, and they're getting out of the road, or they know an implosion's about to occur, and they know it. Just like they knew it in 2008, that it was all going to come apart. Or it's like you alluded to last week and a little bit just now, they're being killed because they are not at the top echelons, and yet they still hold some information that could eviscerate the top echelons. So they're being. I'm reading one right now about Mike Duker, just here next door to me here in Washington State, found a few days ago, heaved off the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Who knows? Is it murder, a suicide? Bankers are going down. It's hard for me to feel a lot of sympathy for these guys, but certainly it's worth digging into, and I'll bring some of that information to the next DoomCast for sure.
It might be a monthly segment,
Well,
more and more
it could be
guys.
weekly. The way it's going, it looks like it could be weekly. But Doug, I want to jump back a little bit to what you were talking about with subprime and the creation of the problems we had from 2001 to 2008. And yeah, there was a lot of subprime lending and a lot of people that got loans that shouldn't get loans. I'm not going to argue that is definitely a fact. But that number of people, the number of bad risks that got loans, is minuscule in comparison to the fraud that went on in bundling and packaging and selling debt around the world and derivatives on that debt around the world. That's really what caused the implosion of 2008 that we still are feeling the consequences of now. And that is what will lead to the next implosion that happened. In 2008, nationally, there was only $9 trillion in loan debt. Now that in mortgage debt, that's good risks like Doug Owen and bad risks like Charlie McGrath and everybody in between. I'm just using us two as an example here. That is the total amount of mortgage debt in 2008, $9 trillion. Now, the amount of debt that was given to people who shouldn't got loans is that number is not even $1 trillion. The estimates were $30 billion in loans given. So that is not what caused the collapse of 2008. It is not the people. It is not the average people in this country or deadbeats in this country that is going to cause the 2014 collapse. Now, that's definitely going to be what's put before the cameras and put before the television. It's going to be your lazy uncle who never got a job since he lost his in 2011, and he's on the government dole. He's the reason the country's imploding. But we need to make sure that we keep pumping the message here on DoomCast that the real culprits that cause this, the real agents of destruction, are not the people. We don't have enough power to affect that kind of change nationally. It is these turncoat politicians in Washington, D.C., and these bankers, some of which, fortunately, are heaving themselves off of bridges, but it is this ilk that is causing the destruction of this country and the economy around the globe.
Well, it's interesting now that they have MyRA, the government subsidized or backed Barack Obama care for you and your loved ones into the future.
That's right.
Now Bill Maher, as well as Jimmy Kimmel and several other high paid and, well, with Bill Maher, I mean, very agenda driven people, especially a guy considering the fact that he gave over $1 million to Barack Obama personally on a stage. You can only guess where his allegiances may lie because, obviously he didn't give others.
Is Bill Maher jumping on the MyRA bandwagon?
Well, they're jumping on the screw the old people meme now, where it's like, well, Social Security pensioners don't want it. They have this little bit about him saying, well, when Grandpa pulls a quarter out from behind your ear instead of giving to you, now he keeps it for himself. So, these little, of course, I don't know if you saw the Jimmy Kimmel skit about the old people voting, and that's why the kids are buying them the Levitra and other sex drugs, and that's where all the money's going. So basically, it's this whole idea that, we know that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. At some point, the kids in this country that are putting into this know that there's no way to recoup any of this. And now, I think you're going to see that point. Maybe we've hit that with my RA. It needs a better name, because how can you sell that? My RA, my retirement account, will be now this new option. So they're going to let Social Security die. So many of us, the baby boomers, as well as Generation X, and maybe even a few of those to follow, are going to be the ones getting screwed, because we're not going to get Social Security. It's going to be dry, and we're putting into it now, and we'll probably get bamboozled into one of these other systems, forcibly, by the way.
Yeah.
Unconstitutionally in my mind, but this this whole idea of the greater good and social safety nets, I think it's run its course. So now, because of the insolvency, the mismanagement, and how they've really destroyed any value, if there ever was something in the retirement accounts for Americans, that's over. And there's this distinctive change, and you can see it just in the political and pop culture.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and it is going to be, it's going to be sold by celebrity and politician alike. Sometimes it's one and the same, the way of the future in savings. But don't have any doubts about it. This is the same crap they talked about in 2009 about stealing your retirement and replacing it, guaranteeing you that you would never lose X amount of dollars. You would be held at these levels, pre-collapse levels. And we're just going to shove bonds into that account. There's $5 trillion in savings around this country right now, and this falling empire is going to go after that money. They're going to go after it, and they call it a MyRA. They're going to be enforcing it at one point by the barrel of a gun. The government is coming not only for your guns, folks. They're coming for your money. You can bet on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that they already do that to the tune of probably 30 to 60%, depending on who you are and how much you pay.
They want that $5 trillion. They want that $5 trillion that's out there in independent retirement accounts. They want it, and they're going to come for it.
And they're going to do it under the guise of protecting you from.
The Federal Reserve wants your money. The cabal, the bankers want your money. They're going to come get it.
But you confuse all those people out there that are saying, well, come on now, Charlie McGrath. The bankers create all the money. Okay, how can that work? How does that... It gets to be this. I get this all the time with people that I know, and they say, well, if the government wanted to kill everybody and take their money, then why do they like it so much? If the corporations wanted to explode the global financial system, how would that benefit them? It doesn't seem to benefit them at all. It's just like, well.
Well, if you're presented with that argument, or anybody listening is presented with that argument, all you really need to do is not having to listen to anybody like myself or Doug or DoomCast or any other program or any other pundit. They can find out for themselves in about 5 minutes of research. Just look at the institutions. I'm not even going to put a name, a negative connotation name with these banks. I'm not going to call them scumbag bankers or too big to fail bankers or these institutions that control and dominate this vampire squid cabal of banks that run the world. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, look at banks pre-2008. Look at how many regional banks were in this country in 2008. Look now at 2014 and look at how many regional banks are in this country in 2014, and this evisceration of wealth that has happened between 2008, 2014, who came out on bottom and who came out on top. It's a very, very simple thing to look up and find. When you do, you're going to find 6 or 7 institutions that are far more powerful than they were back in 2008 when they were just called too big to fail. Now, if those institutions that were called too big to fail then are now larger and more systemic and could still do the same kind of damage and far worse than they did in 2008, and everybody else is poorer, including the once 10,000 regional bank that is now fallen below 7,000 regional banks, if those guys are all on the losing end and that very small group is on the winning end, then that is exactly the picture you need to show somebody to see how destroying wealth and destroying economies benefits them. It makes them more powerful. It takes any competition that might be out there for them and destroys them. So there's your simple, quick answer on how you want to. If somebody thinks, well, Goldman Sachs has no reason to want to destroy global markets. Yes, it does. because it wants to become more powerful. And it will, as long as there's turmoil around the planet. And that's what we have.
We do have a lot of turmoil, don't we?
We do. We have Sochi turmoil. And, what's going on there? What's going on in the Olympics, Doug?
The Olympics, yeah. It's
I did see one headline come across: a bomber on a plane was going to hijack it, take it to Sochi. I'm so sick of the terror alert. Terror
two bombers, toothpaste bombs, can't take any liquid, just about anything to de-incentivize or to basically deter people from going to Sochi. The DHS was there with ample ammunition. If you didn't want to go because you had to, or the FAA, you'd have to bounce all over the map just to get to Sochi. So before we got to Sochi, the media got there, and we heard that there was water that burned people in the face. Not that you can't find that in places in West Virginia currently, but the whole message was this is really cheap, and that Russia is not ready for the Olympics. A lot of the people, the media there, were reporting that there were cameras in their bathrooms and the shower heads. And I just thought of this. I mean, it's just reminiscent of the
awesome.
Yeah. Allegedly, there's these pictures. I looked and tried to find the pictures of these, media folks that are getting compromised by the KGB or now the FSB. And most of those stories turned up bunk. But, I mean, what would you expect from the mainstream media being there? So that was one angle. Of course, the dogs. Did you hear about all the propaganda? They really got it going with that Vladimir Putin's a dog murderer. Now, we know what usually goes into having any Olympics, and that is taking farmers' land from them, killing them, re-educating them, just pointing to China. Nobody seemed to have, none of the human rights watch groups were really upset about China, but this time, there's this stray dog problem. We have to kill all the dogs. So that was kind of interesting. So there's been a lot of flack from the U.S. towards Russia. So then, okay, we have the EU flub. Did you hear about this?
Go.
Okay, so the Ukrainian government, they were the point or topic of conversation between Victoria Nuland and the ambassador to the Ukraine. So and of course, RT did the most reporting on this. So this video comes out with this recording of her basically saying, fuck the EU. We're going to do this. She's basically, as she puts it, and I love the terminology, midwifing the new government, because one of the contentions or concessions rather by the government was to allow one of these political activists that into the government. And so she's basically deciding who it is. It's really riveting. You can go and get the audio pretty much anywhere. But her talking in these very brash and matter-of-fact, terms, using things like, and we've heard this, the marriage, discussing the relationship between the U.S. and the Ukraine. So I think that the release of this is kind of the, tit for tat, that Russia is doing to kind of embarrass the U.S. The State Department spokeshole, she had to respond to this because Victoria Nuland basically said F the EU. And the only European politician, ironically, that has said anything about it has been Angela Merkel, who we know has been the target of the NSA spy probe out of all the world leaders. For whatever reason, there's this row there. And I haven't made all the connections, but I realize that there's something with Germany, and maybe there always has been since World War II. Maybe I'm just, trying to search too much through the meta, not just looking at the real issue here. I mean, Kim.com said that he was targeted because he was German and that he was flamboyant. So, it seems that there's something there with the NSA, the Department of Homeland Security, Germany, and why they seem to be the target of this. But nonetheless, she's the only person that said anything about this and basically, denounced Victoria Nuland. She's the one. She used to be Hillary Clinton's press person for the State Department, and she was the one handing out candy with John McCain during the protest, the AKA revolution that was happening there on the ground. But I mean, just points more to U.S. interventionalism, blah, 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 and how this game's run. But I thought, with all of this, I mean, of course we have the whole Winter Olympics itself that has become nothing less than too big to fails, an advertising ploy using all these Olympians to sell Visa, MasterCard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so commercialized. Even on Russia's end, this year, outspending all other countries, a whopping $51 billion, if you believe it, and I don't know that I believe it, went into the preparations and into holding the 2014 Winter Olympics. But
so are they saying they outspent China on the Summer Olympics?
Yeah, 40. Let's see. The London Games cost, the opening ceremonies alone cost $42.3 million this year, which is this year right now. Right. Russia shelled out $51 billion for the 2-week event, making these games the most expensive of all previous Winter Olympics combined. All of them. So,
well, this is what I say. You don't get, I mean, you can't have commode cameras and shower head cameras. That isn't cheap, Doug. That technology costs something. So I believe it.
Apparently so, yeah. Well, and that's the whole way that you compromise politicians and journalists. And I think it's funny because, the media is highlighting how the Russians are trying to do this, and it's so elementary, it's so Pollyannish. But when you look at the NSA and what we know that they're doing with politicians, our representative government, and
you know what it's like? It's almost like Cold War romper room. It's like all this crap happened during the Cold War when I was growing up, and the shots across the bow, and the spying, and the espionage, and the framing, and the honeypots, and all that kind of thing. That all happened, probably at a much more, I don't want to use the word professional, but a much more productive level.
But how much of that was hype? How much of the the intelligence and the capabilities of the Russians was highly exaggerated to justify budgets? I mean, one of the things I think is pretty funny is that you have this just massive amount of exploitation of these, the athletes, and then they always point to this.
Right. And then, back in the height of the Cold War, at least America could say at that point in time that, when we sent an athlete to the Olympics, it was an amateur. And those days are gone. I mean, that's long. I mean, and the argument there was, Russia always won the gold medal in hockey because basically they were called amateurs, but this is what they did for their whole entire life. They were professionals. And that goes along the lines of any communist country in any sport. They dominated because, these people, that was their job. They were professionals in every sense of the word other than being called professionals. And we still sent, our best college athletes, because it's supposed to be, always was supposed to be an amateur event. And now it's just turned into this 53 billion. I mean, 53 billion spectacle. And I can't look at a television or computer ad without seeing some Sochi athlete with a Visa thing on their butt.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me a lot of the Hunger Games. Have you seen this? I mean, rather than looking at.
Whoa. Here's the deal. I did spend $23.99 to watch the next Hunger Games, whatever the second one was, in my room one night in Las Vegas.
Part two.
Catching Fire, is that it? Is that number 2? That's the one I watched.
Oh, I don't know. I just read this piece from Samantha Retrossi from The Nation, and regardless of all the other things that she may write, this is actually kind of pointed. And she mentioned the patriotic glory and that the Olympians are like these prize ponies that they bring out with flags on them to represent the exceptionalism of the the state, and how this kind of represents this kind of global pageantry. I think it's interesting because the whole idea of the Olympics really was about geopolitics and globalization itself, and bringing people together surrounding something that's not political, but giving all of us a reason to have this common interest in using sports, just like back to the really the beginning of human history. I mean, we can go back to the Pantheon and probably far beyond the Colosseum and the like, to look at how pageantry and how sporting events were used to bring people together and to.
Would you like a medal count update? I can give you one.
I think the U.S. actually has some this year, which is kind of a stretch.
Right now, we're in third place on medals.
Mm-hmm.
Norway's leading the pack with 7, 2 gold, 1 silver, 4 bronze, followed by the Netherlands, that has 2 golds, 1 silver, 1 bronze, and the USA, 2 gold and 2 bronze for 4. Tied with Canada. Nope, excuse me. Ahead of Canada, same medal count, but we have more golds. So there's your winners right now. Norway, Netherlands, the good old USA, and Canada. Boy, Russia better step up. They spent $53 billion. They want some results besides naked women and men.
Well, they probably don't have a lot of figure skaters there. At least I don't know. Maybe I'm making a broad statement, but
you know what? I'm going to say it. The Olympics have become something that maybe it's just me. I'm jaded. And I know there's people that love this time. I got a lot of friends that love the Olympics. Every 2 years you get a wait and it comes and you get a blah pageantry, blah, blah, blah. I freaking hate it because all it has become is the Super Bowl. It's like a giant Super Bowl, right? Where it's pageantry, like you're talking about, pageantry and advertisement. That's it. That's all it is. And to me, it's just a giant waste of money and a giant waste of time.
I don't like the fact that there's no scoring. Okay, it's all subjective. It's all about what I believe you did. Whether you're snowboarding or you're most of these competitions, not all of them, but the ones that I believe your dance is more beautiful than the other. It kind of has this underlying idea, and I just don't like those kind of sports necessarily, or the kind of judging that that it's in the eye of the beholder as to who has won. I think that there's usually a clear victor.
What sport is that? I mean, that would only be figure skating or that the crap they do with
skateboarding, half piping, all that stuff, or
Well, but you got skiing, and that's not.
I guess those display performance sports.
Yeah. Biathlon. Wait a minute, biathlon. That's kind of cool, where they shoot the gun.
Yeah, but those are scored. Those are not.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm on a different track. I see more of that pageant or the more of the dance or whatever. That I see that more in the Summer Olympics and the winter, and I'm thinking the only thing in the Winter Olympics is figure skating that is so subjective, right? I don't know. Maybe who cares? Speed skating, snowboarding.
Who else has to prepare for the?
The luge. The luge is cool, and the bobsled. That's kind of cool. Those are kind of cool.
The Jamaican bobsledders are in this year.
Yeah, Jamaican bobsledders. Hockey.
Seriously?
Hockey's cool.
Hockey is cool. Yeah.
Curling. Not a big curling fan.
Curling can be okay. It's kind of fun.
It's so bizarre to watch. A little puck, a little heavy stone, and people sweeping the ice in front of it.
Yeah, that's why I like it, because it's just kind of odd, but it's a sport, so you're like, it's just kind of, I don't know, bewildering. You're like, okay, that really is a sport. Some of those things are just so.
Olympics
odd.
lost it for me when they announced they were going to take wrestling out of the Summer Olympics, like the key foundational sport that the Olympic Games began on in Greece all those years ago, and we're going to get rid of wrestling. That sealed the deal for me.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of wrestling, and just because of the attrition and all the things that go into it, and what you have to do to your body, and what these coaches ask these kids to do.
It's still an unbelievable sport. It's an unbelievable sport that takes more conditioning and more willpower and more determination, I think, personally, than any sport you could possibly name. I don't believe it has a harder training regimen than wrestling. A high level wrestling on the amateur level is brutal. It's brutal. Those guys have to spend decades in wrestling rooms getting just absolutely hammered and pounded and being in misery a big portion of their young life. To me,
you're selling me on this. Oh yeah.
It's truly a sport that you are either 100% physically and mentally into it, or you suck at it. You're really, really bad at it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that people forget is that you have to pay $10,000, and this brings up a whole.
Wait a minute. What?
You have to pay $10,000 if you bring home the gold. Did you know that? Did you know that the IRS actually preps? They actually have agents preparing to pounce on the winners.
That's why I want Civil War, Doug.
And take their winnings, their earnings. So
That's
you go
why
there.
I am a proponent of a civil war, Doug Owen.
So you win a prize, right, for the state, okay, and you have to represent your country. So this is all about nationalism. It's all about promoting your country as the best, and as a way that the United States government, the IRS, the tax code reward you is by charging you. Now listen to this. This is what I don't get. The idea that something has value, that somebody's giving you something of value, that you have to pay the government. So if somebody gives me a rock, let's say a moon rock, I don't know, so a jewel, a moon rock, okay, and it's worth $40,000. Okay, it has some value, and that value is very subjective. Rare. It's very subjective. I mean, you don't know what it's worth. Okay, it's probably invaluable at the same time. You know, you could put a price on it and sell it. Somebody says, hey, here's $10 million. You're like, I didn't like that rock that much anyway. I was just using it as a paperweight. But my point being is that it's really in the eye of the beholder, and it's only worth what somebody's going to pay you for it. So the idea that you win the gold medal, you come home, the IRS says that this has a certain value, and you have to pay us $10,000. It just seems, number one, it pisses me off that it's unchallenged, that none of these Olympic, I think it was 2012 Olympics, one of those, I'm trying to think back, that there was one American that kind of made a stink about this and the fact that he had to pay for it. Somebody else comped him and paid for him. But this whole idea that the government can tax you for having something that's valuable. What if I have something that's worth nothing, but one day it is. Now they can come through and reassess every time somebody gives something to somebody else and make this arbitrary demand that you pay them money for this alleged value.
I'm looking at an article while you're talking there about moon rocks and the such. The podium value, which I'm assuming is the actual value of the precious metal that is in the gold medal. It's only the biggest, but it's not the most expensive. The size of this Sochi gold or silver or bronze is the largest physical metal apparently ever. I don't know if it's the size of a garbage can lid or what, but it's
awesome.
You
look like Flavor Flav walking around with your big medals.
Yeah, the Flavor Flav gold medal. Yeah, the 2004 Sochi Winter Olympics gold medal podium value clocks in at approximately $566, a 20% decline from $708 gold medal value of the 2012 Summer Olympics in London. So the value of the medal itself is $566. So are you telling me the IRS is tacking on another $9,500 in the value?
What do they go for? I mean, that's what they're going by. They're not going by the actual melt value. They're going by what you could probably sell it for on eBay. I mean, that's how I measure the value of it.
So are they charging them $10,000?
Yeah. When they come home, they have to pay taxes on this thing, and they haven't even sold it. No cash is transferred. After they go and basically vow to not protest, to not be political, to not say anything because it's in the best interest of the state, and then when they get home, they get hammered for money.
I think this metal's kind of cool looking, to be honest with you. Have you seen it?
Do you think it's worth $10,000?
I don't think it's worth. I think it's worth $566. You melt it down. That's let me ask you this.
Can you eat it?
Did the Seattle Seahawks have to pay income tax? Do they have to claim the ring?
I think
that
so.
They get?
I think so.
Huh? Well,
yeah, it's like a capital gain or something, isn't it? I mean,
and again, this is why we need a civil war, Doug Owen.
What's up with that? What you really believe that you need a civil war? I mean, we see what's happening in the Ukraine. If you look at Syria and all of the outside players that would be involved, all of the people out there that would like to help us fund our civil war. I mean, before you can have a civil war, you got to find somebody that's going to help finance it. Charlie McGrath.
Right. That's me. That's me and you, Doug. We're going to finance it.
Yeah.
We're financing this thing. We're going to do it with proceeds from the program.
Okay. Let me know how that works out for you.
Well, it might be a start. It's just a county civil war because we got to start small.
There might be some people that are upset about this. This is one of the most ridiculous stories that I just threw into the grab bag of stuff to bring up that I thought was pretty ridiculous. Eating while driving, police checkpoints begin in Kentucky, and this shows you how desperate they are for cash and how much they want to help you. But they call this Operation Raid remove aggressive, impaired, and distracted drivers from Kentucky roadways. So they've already spent money on this PSA, and they're pushing this new quote-unquote safe driving program. The law enforcement will be more visible, and the number of checkpoints will increase. The program will allow each post to identify target areas, quote, not only just texting, but anything that's distracting drivers. This includes eating and drinking. We are going to be out looking for those people as well. You're going to see a major force when it comes time for St. Patrick's Day, because, everybody's driving around eating and drinking green beer and the like, and other holiday weekends, according to Trooper Biven of the Kentucky State Police. So, Brand, really? Come on, man. Can you find more ridiculous things to chastise drivers about?
Yeah, man, it has nothing to do with chastise or safety. That's what it's sold to us folks as, right? It's for the safety of the kids and stuff. Look,
I want people to be engaged, but how do you get the government to determine how engaged I am? What if I'm just daydreaming and staring at my, eyelids, or asleep, or, whatever it may be that leads me to reckless driving? I mean, this is just a reason to pull people over and to run them through this dragnet. Okay, you got a warrant. All right, we found a felon. Okay, you got some pot. You're going to spend a lot of money on lawyers. It's going to be a big deal for you and your family. Okay, you're drunk. You're...
No, man, listen, every single vehicle rolling in this country right now is nothing more than, in most cases, a 4-wheel ATM machine going. And they, the more legislation, the more codes, the more statutes they can pile on to the books, the more crap they can collect money for. And this is it. This is at the end of it. At the end of the day, it's revenue generation. We're so over legalized in this country. There's nothing you do that you can't be issued some kind of a citation for. And of course, the citation is being issued because at the end of it, there's going to be a payday for that county or that city or the state. That's it. That's what the police are out there for. Say what you will, and take the criticism that you will, that the police force, the first responders are heroes and they're out there in harm's way. You know what? I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. It's more dangerous to be a farmer than it is to be a cop. It's more dangerous to work in the timber industry than it is to be a cop. There's a lot more industries that you have a higher chance of losing your life doing that job than you do in being a cop. So when you hear this bunk about this ultimate respect for the first responders and they're out there keeping us safe, bullcrap. They're out there primarily, not in every case, primarily they're out there to generate revenue. That's where you come in.
Especially the highway department.
Eating your Big Mac, driving down the street. Oh, look. Now we have a law that can allow a $50 or $100 citation to be issued by these first responders who are just out there trying to keep you safe.
Well, it's always about keeping you safe, isn't it? Yeah, I had a buddy of mine. He got pulled over because his shoulder was broke and he was in a sling. So he had his seatbelt on, but he couldn't put it over his shoulder, obviously, because it was in a sling and it was broken. So the cop pulls him over and says, you are not wearing your seatbelt correctly as per manufacturer, and we're going to go ahead and ticket you. And it's like, come on, man, really? Are you really going to ticket me for this? I mean, this is an extenuating circumstance. And the guy had no leniency, no common sense. And my buddy ended up paying the ticket because he was working out of town. One of those scenarios where you just don't have time to fight the state over $50.
99.9% of the people get a ticket. They're just going to pay it.
Yeah. That doesn't have to, the time and effort, didn't have it the time. He was like, I really wanted to fight it, but and don't we all? If I just had
how much was it for him to have a broken arm and not be able to properly
$250.
$250. Keeping you safe, America. One $250 ticket at a time. That cop has nothing better to do than pull over some guy who's got a broken shoulder. First of all, he isn't hurting anybody. It isn't like he's driving on pain medication or something or driving inebriated. Right. So the only person that could possibly get hurt is him, right? Because he's got a broken shoulder and he can't put his seatbelt on right. And this scumbag is going to give him a $250 ticket because of it. Tell me that cop has no other motivation than generating revenue when they issue him a ticket. It has nothing to do with safety.
It's all about America. Keeping it safe. Keeping people
I'm getting really mad. I'm getting mad in this episode.
Hey, you know what? You want to talk about something that always brightens our day?
Yeah.
Martial law.
Let's bring it.
All
Bring
right,
on
so-
martial law.
So Justice Antonin Scalia predicts that the Supreme Court will eventually authorize another wartime abuse of civil rights, such as internment camps for the Japanese Americans during World War II. This brings up something that I wanted to mention last time because we had this like arbitrary debate, I guess, about whether we're going forward or backward. And I said, well, it depended on who you were and at what time you lived in this country as to whether it's a good thing or where we're at is backwards from where we want to be. And I think back to the World War II internment camps where our government, which I don't think that they could do today, and you can debate me on this, but I think they would have a hard time selling us on internment camps with the decentralization of media and with a much more aware and cognizant public. Whereas during World War II, they said, look, we just need to round up all of these Japanese people and other ne'er-do-wells and communists, and we're going to put them in camps and strip them of their constitutional rights. We're going to take their property. We're going to take everything that they own, and we'll let people come and visit them if we deem so. And that's just basically, based on whatever they wanted, whatever metric that they set up. And you said, well, I don't know if that would go over as well. But the interesting thing is that, you have a Supreme Court justice pretty unprecedentedly saying, look, the government during times of war will do whatever they want. This has been mimicked or parroted by Michael Hayden this week, talking about, well, the government basically will throw the Constitution to the wayside for up to 6 months to a year during times of emergency. And, it basically, this idea that when there are extreme or uncertain times where we have exterior or internal threats, that the government does whatever it wants to. And if that's rounding up people that they want, that they may do that again in the future. And he said, quote, you're kidding yourself if you don't think that this could happen again in the future, end quote. So,
well, you're kidding yourself, Doug Owen, if you think that would be tough to pull off because of the advancement and the dissemination of information. Because actually, I don't want to correct
think people would be screaming about that if they just rounded
who
up
cares,
a
man?
group like the
listen
Muslims?
Listen to me. In 1980, there was, 50, 60 companies that controlled, 80, 90% of the information, right? You talk about the ability for information and truth to get out. I'm saying it's just the opposite. It doesn't mean we can't be heard more now as individuals than we could in 1980. But in 2014, 5 or 6 control 80 or 90% of the information. Back in the 1930s and 40s, when the Japanese internment camps came into play, there was more. It was the information was broke up to between more than 50 companies that controlled most of the information. That didn't help those
people out, and it didn't change the sentiment. And even though they had a more, I guess we could say, dispersed media or a decentralized media as far as investment, that didn't help any of those people, and none of them dared to get, challenge it.
Look,
I mean, you would at least have the counter of the web, the blogosphere that would.
Well, so what? We have that now. We've had that since 2001.
I just think that people would be much more upset. I think that
they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. They would be all lined up like cattle, willing to.
But nobody even protested this. Everybody was. The consensus. It wasn't total consensus, but there was almost no speaking out about it at all.
About the Japanese internment camps?
Yeah, it was very minimal.
And there wouldn't be about the next one either, because it's going to be wrapped in some kind of patriotic anti-terrorist fervor. It's going to be wrapped in a bunch of bullcrap. And when the camps open then, or in the near future, when they open up, you'll have the mass population cheering for it, because the majority still tunes in to that 80 or 90% controlled media juggernaut that controls all this information. So just like 2001 brought us the Patriot Act.
But that's just the old people, though. Now we know that the demographics are out.
No, man. No, we still have the same crowd, man. We're still on the same planet where we were on in 2001 when these kids were born, right? And now they're putting on their guns and going and fighting in the wars in these same sandboxes that they didn't even know existed when they were born. They're still buying into the patriotic crap Doesn't matter if the generation is a little more techno savvy. 2001 comes, planes hit buildings, and we shred the Constitution. And there's people crying from the rooftops, Doug Owen. You're one of them. I'm one of them. There's millions of people who are out in force talking about what's going on and how the injustice and how the Constitution is being shredded. It doesn't stop this political machine from continuing to shred and continuing to invade and destabilize. It's gonna get worse.
My only point is that it's no different. That I guess the only argument you get from me is that it's absolutely no different. The only difference now is that more people are aware and more people would be appalled, whereas there was really no way to question or to have any kind of forum, any kind of consortium of people that talking about these things, because it was so controlled that there was not much interaction between people once you had basically the radio and then the television that brought us our centralized focused issues of the day. So I mean, I agree that maybe you had more people that owned newspapers, but I think now today so much of that is completely irrelevant. I mean, when you look at Fox News, I mean, they have a dying demographic of people that, the only people that are watching Bill O'Reilly, they're 55 plus. These people are on the receiving end of getting, screwed by just about every one of these half-cocked schemes. So, you talk to the youth of today, they're not watching Rachel Maddow, and they sure as hell ain't listening to Bill O'Reilly. Those people are, very, limited. The people that, consume media that way are slowly becoming, irrelevant. So
they're lining up for the MyRA.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be those people that are drinking the Kool-Aid, no matter what it is.
Yeah. Well, Scalia's right. The Supreme Court is going to be, at some point in the future, there will be.
I think the point is great that, that the Supreme Court is, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but that, the Supreme Court is not the law of the land, and not necessarily because it's the Supreme Court is it going to vote, with the Constitution. Obviously, if there is, he's saying that it's very politicized and that they would happily shred the Constitution. So I think if nothing else, this is unprecedented, the fact that he's pointing to this, because back in World War II, they would never say anything like that because they feared the public. I think now that's one of the other dynamics is that they don't fear the public. They'll tell the public that they're completely compromised and they're watching everything that you're doing without much repercussion. I mean, because basically, everyone understands now that the government's watching pretty much everything that they do, and those that have decided that that's okay are just getting used to this idea. Well, the government is Big Brother, and Big Brother loves me. In the other side of that is, I guess when you talk about the Civil War, that huge divide, the people that think, wow. And Civil War doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to have two distinct sides. It's not usually how it happens. It's not nearly as black and white as it may have been during our Civil War, which was over.
I don't even think it was black and white then.
Not really. I mean, you had a lot of people that, foreign interest, a lot of foreign intervention.
Absolutely.
If you look at Syria now, I mean, it's something of the same kind of, I mean, obviously it's modern day and there's a lot more at stake, and there's more,
Durka.
there's more religions and, different groups of people fighting for a lot of different reasons. I guess it was like that too, but, the bigger dynamic and more international players.
Well, sure. And the winner writes the history and so forth and so on. But I think the thing to take away from Scalia and this announcement is, you know what, and combine it with recent economic news and things that have been happening on that front, and it paints a very clear picture of where we are going as a nation. And Doug, it isn't back to, it isn't going to be a decade of growth and then a few recessions mixed in there. Those days are done and over with. It's going to be a whiplash type of movement going forward. Whiplash in this economy from feast to famine type of situation. And I think 2014, I still believe it, that it's going to be a year that's pivotal in this economy. I think it's going to coincide perfectly with the midterm elections and start to prime the pump for who's the savior of the economy and the banking system and the savior of freedom and democracy for 2016. And then, we could devote a whole show to that. Who's going to be put before us on the red team and the blue team?
Hillary's winning. It's over. Okay, that's my prediction. Not much of a prediction.
Oh, winning the election or winning the blue
everything.
Teams?
The whole. It's going to all be Hillary.
You know what? I'm going to join the record increase of 221% of people who've renounced their citizenship this year. I'm going to join that crew in 2016.
You and Tina Turner and
I'm out. I'm out, man. I am out. I'm out. I'm going to Iceland. I'm going to geothermal mine.
They're not taking people anymore. I mean, actually, it's Switzerland here. This is one of the stories I did want to bounce at you, but basically, you're out.
Civil war or I'm out.
Yeah, you might not be welcomed with open arms. In Switzerland, this is actually a curb stomp to the EU and to globalization and the New World Order agenda. They are pushing forward, and they are going to stop open immigration. One of the big hallmarks of being part of the EU and progressive is that we have wide open borders, and this is starting quite a row. And if you know, as you know, here in this country, we have Jeff Johnson talking about the need to use executive orders, and Obama has threatened so forth to pass amnesty, and they have used everything from basically these people they have earned the right to be American citizens to the fact that they are a terrorist, and that they having this subset of people that are not identified, that are not biometrically scanned, that are walking amongst us is a huge danger. So it's interesting because the public opinion is changing, and people are starting to see some of the consequences of these failed Fabian socialist ideals. And with this happening, it's got a lot of people. I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal here, but in Switzerland, limiting this and having a popular vote and having this change in perception, it's only going to hallmark more of this economic nationalism. And that's what spun World War I, World War II, and that was this whole idea that we need economic nationalism and this whole statist agenda, which I think I'm not a big fan. I don't know what you think of fair labor versus free trade, free labor. What's your general thought on that? I know it's kind of
it's kind of off the ball
twisted question. I mean, most.
You know what? Are you talking about let the market determine wage versus a set minimum wage type thing? Is that what you're going
but more so, people, free markets where, somebody's willing to do work for less money should be able to do that in the third world, and we shouldn't have competition. We should allow everybody to be competitive. We should have a true free market across borders.
Yeah. Well, I you know what? I don't know. And I'm going to say that I do business with companies in China, and I've been there, and it goes the same to say with India or some of these other offshore Pacific Rim countries, Asian countries that we send all of our labor to. It isn't fair. It isn't fair to the American worker. It isn't, absolutely not. And the notion that that it has to happen because it can go over there and be done cheaper. It's really disgusting to me because I've seen how these people live. I see how they make. I see where they live. And it's, all we're doing, I believe, when we allow this is hastening the day that we live in the same circumstance. We're not lifting that nation up by taking advantage of slave labor so we can have cheap crap at Walmart. It's not lifting India up or lifting China up. It eventually is eroding the United States and the West, who is partaking in this or is benefiting currently. See, there's always a trade-off, and we as a people tend to forget and tend to be trained into these short cycles, be it a 2-year election cycle, 4-year election cycle, 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
We're trained to think in this very short term, and we don't look at the long term and what it's going to happen what effect it's going to have on the next generation, which is only 10 years down the road, or what it's going to be like for this country in 50 years. We don't consider that, and we don't look at that. And unfortunately, Ross Perot back in the early 90s talked about the sucking sound and how it was jobs leaving Canada and the U.S. And going to China and to Asia and for the want of cheap goods. And he was 100% right. So we look around here now, and we have no capacity to manufacture and produce like we used to have. We have the countries that we're shipping all this money to for their cheap labor becoming larger economies than we are here in the United States and becoming more powerful. So what does it look like? What does it look like in a few years when all of a sudden the real estate leg isn't holding the United States economy up, or the service industry leg isn't holding the U.S. economy up, or the financial system, the financial leg of the economy isn't holding, or of the economy isn't holding this nation up? So what does it look like then? Well, you got to start to think that you become a nation in decline, and inevitably you end up at the level that you're exploiting for all these years. So that's not really an answer to your question, but it's my.
I think it's a key point, though. I mean, this comes from Zero Hedge. Just I'll just read to this for a moment. This wasn't supposed to happen at a time when the European Union, reeling from the ongoing near collapse of the Eurozone, has been preaching its key benefits, quote, the removal of borders and the free transit of labor. Moments ago, Switzerland, with a tiny majority of a 50.4%, voted in favor of new immigration curbs, which requires the government to set an upper limit for foreigners, risking a backlash from the utterly toothless European Union. In some ways, this was a vote of the urban versus the rural population. Voters in the cities of Zurich and Basel and cantons in western Switzerland opposed the measures, while those in rural German-speaking cantons in the Italian-speaking region of Ticino backed it, reports Bloomberg. The problem for Europe is that the backlash against immigration was supposed to be just a pig thing. Portugal, Ireland, as well as Greece, and what's the other I? Ireland,
Spain.
Yeah,
Pig.
Spain. Okay, it's pigs. That's it. So anyway, these are where we've seen the rise in the Golden Dawn and other nationalist parties. So
what a cool name.
Golden Dawn. It's an idea that tomorrow we can have a beautiful, sunset on the Union and a new rise. The rebirth of a nation of people doing things that are great. Yeah, I love those utopian ideas. But anyway, I mean, when you talk about that divide, going back to the Civil War, you see the rural people that are being affected, the people that are farmers, the people that are being forced to compete with foreign, cheap, unskilled labor are the ones that are seeing the need to protect the homeland. They're the ones that believe in the motherland and the need to protect it, where you have the rich, well-off, middle class to leisure class that are living in Zurich that say, hey, it's great. Let all the foreigners come in. We want cheaper prices at Walmart, and that's the bottom dollar, and we're capitalists. And so, the idea, of course, is that we have consensus among the states and that we bring in free labor, and free labor or cheap labor brings about prosperity, blah, 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 blah. So this actually goes against this New World Order doctrine of globalization and tearing down these borders. I think ultimately what people don't get is that the borders have really, or boundaries have been eliminated by the government. And by that, you can't compete with cheap, foreign labor because you have to pay taxes, because you have to adhere to regulations that they may not.
Exactly.
So we don't have a competitive edge. And I believe that if you're going to have those limits, then you should have an offset where you have tariffs or you have to pay a higher price. Not saying a carbon price or, last week we learned about the
or how we used to fund our government before income tax. You mean like the tariffs that you used to run this country?
Right. So
on importing goods?
Well, and that goes against globalization. And basically that is redistribution of wealth from the working class to those a-holes.
Those a-holes.
Those guys. So anyway, the tide is turning.
The tide is turning. I want to end the program and recap. What was the number of bankers? What's the tally on dead bankers?
4 bankers and an oil reporter.
Well, you know what? I'm sad about the oil reporter. My condolences to the oil reporter and her family. But we'll keep the banker tally. We'll keep that updated. And
bankers.
I will refuse to feel any sympathy for bankers who are feeling like they need to check out for the carnage that they have created, or if they're involved in some kind of dubious fraudulent activity and they're whacked for their knowledge, or whacked themselves because of the knowledge that they hold.
And all of you bankers out there, be careful with your nail guns. Apparently,
yeah, they just go off 7 times in a row. Apparently,
right into your forehead. It's amazing.
I fell on my knife 34 times.
It could happen. It could very well happen.
Let me tell you something. There's probably not a nail gun made that I have not at one time or another tried. You know, either at one of these trade shows, or when I was younger building houses. And there's not one of them that will fire 7 times in a row without. You literally have to press that trigger or the plunger, the depressor on the front of the gun. It's not a machine gun. It's just not going to keep firing.
It doesn't go off at a rapid rate. What is it? 3,000 shots per second or whatever the guy said.
Oh my God. We got to do this is a ghost nail gun.
Yeah, it's a ghost nail gun.
It's a ghost nail gun.
Yeah,
30 clip magazine.
Yeah, they're very dangerous. There needs to be more.
One of my favorite. Yeah, it's still one of my favorite. If you haven't seen that, if you don't know what we're talking about, a video of a California senator holding up a honey badger, 30 caliber M4 platform gun, and he calls it a ghost gun, and then he goes on to talk about its ridiculous rate of fire of some 3,000 rounds a minute, which it does not have. And that gun was the reason for his legislation to limit these kind of guns in California. You can't buy that gun in California or anywhere else in this country.
It's very scary.
Without an FFA anyway, so whatever. But check out the video because it's hilarious. Ghost gun. Just type in ghost gun.
Ghost gun. You can print one now
gun.
in your own bedroom. Oh my God. Be fearful.
It fires 30 rounds in a half of a second.
Watch out. There's people eating their Dunkin' Donuts while driving around. They're called cops. Watch out for those guys. Watch them out. Oh, my goodness.
My name is Charlie McGrath. My website is wideawakenews.com. Doug Owen, co-founder and founder, I should say, blacklistednews.com. This has been Doomcast number 27. We'll be back this week, probably Wednesday, with Doomcast 28 in 3 short days.
That's right. So definitely support the show. Spread the word about it. And make us your Valentine next week.
Yes, and next week I'm going to give a full accounting and reporting of folks who were kind enough to send donations. We greatly appreciate it. We will mention those next week for sure. So, Durka.
All right, Charlie, until next time, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Durka.
Muhammad Jihad. Haka Sherpa Bacala. Oh, Durka.